not going to prohibit your travel. I understand you may not live here, but you will need to report to pretrial services here. You're not to possess any firearms or dangerous weapons. You're not to possess or consume any alcohol or illegal drugs. You must notify the court of your address. You're not to have any contact with the alleged victims or their families, and you're also not to discuss the case with any witnesses. That's what the attorneys and their investigators are there to do.
Melissa Gilbert getting emotional there in the courtroom as her husband, Timothy Busfield, is told that he'll be released from jail ahead of his upcoming child sex abuse trial. The actor and director appeared in front of a judge in New Mexico on Tuesday for a bond hearing. Busfield is being accused of touching minors inappropriately on a TV set. Now, after arguments, the judge was not persuaded that Busfield is a danger to the community, as the prosecution was saying he was. The judge said, quote, "There's no evidence of a pattern of criminal conduct, so he should not be behind bars as he's awaiting his trial." Busfield submitted letters to the court vouching for his character, and his attorneys say that he also passed an independent polygraph test. And in the polygraph, Busfield denied touching intimate parts of the child actor referred to as SL. Now, New Mexico, interestingly, is among a few states in America that allow polygraph evidence into criminal cases, but the judge has the final say. So should the polygraph evidence be allowed here if there's a trial? Let's talk about that. Let's bring in retired sergeant and detective with the NYPD, Dan Murphy, and breaking news reporter for The Guardian, Danny Angiano. Good morning to you both. Thank you for waking up with us. Sarge, I'll start with you, please. Your thoughts on him passing the polygraph, New Mexico allowing it to come in, and what you think overall about whether it should be a part of this trial.
Well, in my experience, polygraphs have never been allowed in any area that I worked in terms of being admitted into evidence. In this case, any polygraph can be very subjective. What are the questions that are being asked? Who's asking them? In what context? What's the machine calibration? All these sort of things come into play. Just a blanket statement that he passed an independent polygraph, to me, needs some exploration. There's a lot missing from that statement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate your insight on this and experience, because we know that many courts, as you know, do not allow them in for reasons of reliability. So it's interesting here. This may be very fortunate for him if the judge does permit it in this case because of the laws on the books in New Mexico. And Danny, I want to go to you on something else. It seems that after this very emotional day and such an outpouring of support for Timothy Busfield, and the judge not persuaded by what the state has, not persuaded by the evidence, noting a lack thereof, noting he has no criminal history, all that, letting him out. Are you seeing in Hollywood any support maybe coming forward that we hadn't seen with the announcement of the charges?
We haven't seen that quite yet, but he did receive really high levels of support directed at the judge. There were more than 70 letters that were written for him. Some of those were written by former co-stars, husbands. So we have seen that, but the implications to his life and career are already underway. You know, he's been cut out of a movie that he was scheduled to be in. A Law & Order SVU episode that he was in was pulled. His talent agency has dropped him. So we've seen pretty severe repercussions, and no additional sense of support quite yet, but we will see.
Right. You know, and that's a great point. A lot of this happening in the courtroom, as you noted, Danny, the letters to the judge, and that's the way it should go. I want to talk a little bit about Melissa Gilbert with you, Danny. We see her so emotional. We know she's a beloved star, child actress, been in Hollywood a long time. What do you think this means, that she's standing by her man so publicly, so closely, traveled to New Mexico for this? How much weight do you think this carries in the court of public opinion?
carries a tremendous amount of weight. As you said, she's a very beloved child star, and she has really made it very clear that she's incredibly supportive of him. She wrote this sort of just glowing letter to the judge, testifying to his character, saying that he has the strongest moral compass of anyone she's ever met. And so I think those things, and her appearance in court where she is, just kind of so clearly overcome with emotion, with gratitude that he was going to be released, I think those things do stick out to the public.
Yeah, definitely, Danny. The director of photography on The Cleaning Lady, this is the film where this incident in question might have occurred. The director of photography testified that the kids were never left alone with any individuals on the set, that the parents were the ones who encouraged hugs with adults on the set. Busfield's attorney says that the accused boys' parents, the parents of the accusers, the children, Busfield's attorneys were saying that these parents might have coached the kids toward making incriminating statements after the boys lost roles on the show. So that's something coming out now, the boys losing these roles. So let's take a deeper look here about what was not disclosed to police during this investigation. We have a clip.
Officers are not supposed to speak with children, right, because of the power dynamic, and they want to make sure they're getting a reliable disclosure. So it's not uncommon that the kids did not disclose at that time or were ready to disclose at that time to a police officer that showed up at their house.
Okay, now the defense presented then their own piece of evidence, which was a recording of the police interview with the minors at the center of these allegations. Let's listen.
You know what's right and wrong, right? You know where people can't touch, where people can't do. Yeah, you know that, right? Does Tim ever do that?
No, he's never touched me.
Never touched you?
Yeah.
In like, your private areas, right?
Yeah.
Never did that?
Never.
You know what's right and wrong, right?
Yeah.
You know no one could touch your private areas?
Yeah, but he doesn't touch them.
Doesn't touch your private parts? Okay.
That's not, Your Honor, a failure to disclose. That's an express denial.
Okay, we're going to stay away from the legal arguments right there, because I am so stunned hearing this. Detective Sergeant Dan Murphy, want to go to you. Your thoughts now hearing the children say this didn't happen.
Well, that's a very damning statement for the prosecution. I don't know how you get around that or get over it in terms of making your way towards probable cause without some corroboration. Now, the situation as I know it is this. These children were on set, always surrounded by parents and other people. There was never an opportunity, at least by witnesses who I'm hearing, never an opportunity for Timothy Busfield to be alone with these children. There's lots of eyes on the set. No one has ever reported seeing anything like this. The children, when interviewed, come forward and say right away, nope, very quickly, no, he never did that. I'm not understanding where or at what point during that conversation or a subsequent discussion with those children by different authorities or different persons from the court, how they came forward with this idea that he did this. I think they have mountains to climb with this case. I think that it's problematic to say the least. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, given what I'm hearing so far. I don't understand how we are where we are.
Right, Sarge, right. I'm just gobsmacked at this. When that came out yesterday, because if you have the children, and you heard the lawyer say it, I'm assuming she's the prosecutor, the way she's arguing about this, and express denial. Like, so these kids are both saying it did not happen. And then you have witnesses like the director of photography saying the kids were never alone with him. And then you hear them saying the parents, were encouraging hugs and contact, that a hug is fine, as we know. How do we get to the charging? You raised a great question. Danny, I'd love your thoughts on this. Did this stun you?
Hearing that was quite shocking. Yeah, that expressed denial is just not something that you really expect to hear. That said, the prosecutor did make a point to sort of preface a lot of what we heard in the courtroom by saying that these admissions were made to other people, to a therapist, to a doctor, and pointing out that a doctor was in fact the one that made one of the reports about child abuse. So, and the prosecutor went to great lengths to say that this sort of thing is normal, but I do think that that seems like a tremendous burden to have to overcome when you have a child on tape saying that something didn't happen.
Right. Boy, Danny, thank you so much for that. You're so knowledgeable. So if these children said these things in settings where they have perhaps been more comfortable, like, you know, a therapist's office, something like that, versus what they said to a police detective, Sergeant Murphy, I mean, you were a boss in the NYPD. You know, how do you reconcile that if, you know, if your people come to you with, look, we got conflicting statements from these children?
In a case like this, we would be dealing very closely with the prosecutor's office for their legal opinion as to whether or not what we have is worthy of going forward with an indictment or an arrest. In this situation, it's very confusing. I haven't seen the evidence of testimony or written documents provided by the doctor, therapist, or anyone else who claims to have heard these children make these statements. Now, when you're interviewing children, there's a dynamic at play that's very different than with adults. Children are susceptible to suggestion. They're susceptible to a lot of things, as humans are, as adults are, I'm sorry. But during a conversation with children, you have to understand that sometimes they will say what they want they think you want to hear, or they think will make the conversation easiest if it's uncomfortable and make it go away. And in this case, that may be the case. We don't know.
Yes, with such great insight. As always, Sergeant Dan Murphy with the Gold Shield Show. Thank you kindly. Breaking news reporter with The Guardian, Danny Angiano, up early for us. Thank you kindly as well. We appreciate you. We'll see you both soon.